Row crop farmers, farmland owners, and beginning farmers are increasingly curious about soil health. Integrating grazing ruminants ramps up soil health, and the feed value of cover crops can often offset the added cost of planting them. Livestock can also utilize a small grain in rotation or perennials planted on more marginal row crop fields. This video is one in a series through the Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Agriculture's Endowed Chair in Agricultural Systems. Jim, LeeAnn, and grandson Andrew VanDerPol are among 3 generations in Pastures A Plenty farm and meats in west central Minnesota. To make this partially low-lying farm, with 100 acres of pasture and 200 acres of crops, successful in the Chippewa River Watershed, they manage a cow-calf herd, grass-finished steers and pastures, and raise hogs which are marketed through their meat business. Enterprises also include organic row crops rotated with hay. The VanDerPols describe their roles, the transitioning of farming responsibilities to Andrew, their managed rotational grazing system with cattle, differences they see in the land after shifting a marginal field to perennials, a web of local economic connections powered by livestock on the land, and future plans.
Our operation mostly revolves around hogs, and then cattle are probably the close second, and then filling it out with crops of soybeans, corn, and alfalfa hay.
The front half of the farm is in permanent pastures.
The corn and soybeans are all organic, and they are usually sold to Sunopta and Pipeline Foods.
I pretty much work in the meats business with our son Josh and daughter-in-law Cindy, and then everybody else is, does do a little bit in there.
I've taken on a little project on some acres over toward Wilmer, getting equip funding in place, getting a water system and fencing in place. And I feel pretty good about that. The land is going to be in grass instead of in corn and beans over there, and it's really highly erodible land, not like this at all. It's up on the glacial till, and it needs grass and grazing, and so I'm pleased to get it in some kind of shape where somebody's going to be able to use it that way.
When I first started off, I started off with cattle, and then I sort of made my way throughout the farm and moved towards hogs and moving towards crops now, and really dipping my toes in everything right now, and really finding it my biggest interest is mostly livestock with cattle and hogs.
How do you manage your rotational grazing system, including shade on hot days?
We try for 5 moves a year. Sometimes we get 6, sometimes it's only 4. It really depends on precipitation level.
Once you get onto the yard more, where there's some other paddocks, we have a very good established grove that it's been here since I think probably the farm was bought back in the 50s.
Some of it, yeah.
And then we added to the backside of it to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We fenced in a windbreak there on the north side of the driveway too.
Yep.
For temporary shade where we can run them in on hot afternoons.
Yeah, and during when the days were getting up to 100 this year, we were running the cattle into the grove, and they were sort of sitting in that thick trees, enjoying the shade and eating what they can off the ground that comes through, that can grow through what sunlight does come through the trees. So,
What differences have you observed by shifting to perennials and grazing cattle in these fields?
Like I say, it helps to have been the one or one of them that took the farm from what it was to what it is, because you really see some things, It'd be unbelievable us standing out here if this were a row crop field the way it was 20 years ago. If we could get out here for the mud, we wouldn't want to be out here just for the weeds and so on. And look at it now. It's pretty palatable stuff, and So yeah, it's a big thing.
A couple of years ago, you dug up a little section of the pasture and then something out of the cornfield, and we could really see a difference in what the soil looked like underneath from the pasture.
And that's our cornfield. You know, and where we've got maybe 5% organic matter, which is ahead of most of the area. Most of the area is down around 3 or 4, I think. And the pastures we're standing on here is about 6.5% organic matter. But the root mass was twice as deep and twice as, the soil was very much more developed in the pasture, and you had the crumb structure, you know, the cracking and all of that kind of stuff that really helps keep things from eroding. If you look at the area here, you can see that we're a little higher going that way in elevation. And then in the neighbor's field, that cornfield there is right across from our grass at the same level, but it goes up after that a ways. And the amount of time we've had standing water here on our grass since we made the transition, I think we started it about 20 years ago, transitioning this all to grazing with sheep first and then added cattle.
Yeah, a couple of years combine got stuck, and Jim said, that's enough. I think we need to, you know, we were looking into some alternative.
It's just amazing how much less we have water standing here, even with the inflow from the neighbor's cornfield there. And we almost all the drainage off of that cornfield, what runs off that cornfield ends up on us. So it's not just the rain that falls on our grass, it's also the rain that falls on that corn, or at least about 2/3 of it. And so that's really pleasing to me. If you look at the grass here, it's too thick to see the soil anywhere. And you know, that's kind of what we want, and it really holds the moisture, it really holds the rain where it lands, and it also means that it takes a lot longer to dry out in the dry time too. So,
How is your farm connected to other farmers, landowners, and businesses in the area?
they buy hogs in as we need them to fill in from several of neighboring farmers, and I think we're a fairly important part of those farms' success too, because we pay better than the market does. So you know that we're linked with the farmers around us, both on the cattle and on the hogs, which is something I think to feel pretty good about.
We're getting byproduct from K's Natural. We take out 400 pounds of corn and soybeans out of the feed batch, and then replace it with 400 pounds of the byproduct. It makes the feed a lot cheaper, and the hogs really enjoy liking it.
Are there barriers to more widespread adoption of grazing cattle in row crop country?
I would say the extra work that is involved with raising cattle on pastures. It's not just putting feed out in front of them. It's moving them every day. It's making sure that the paddocks are sufficiently stocked with plant life and with cattle. Make sure that you're getting what you can off the pastures.
Pretty intense management to manage both crops and livestock on the same parcel. It takes some doing. It's really exciting. Sometimes it goes wrong.
What changes are you contemplating, Andrew?
We found that this pasture has been, these pastures have been doing so well that it seems like sort of a waste to be feeding cow-calf pairs on it, and we thought that if we got rid of the cow-calf pairs, we could probably double the amount of feeder cattle that we have grazing, and double the amount of cattle and keep the same amount of production on the pastures.
Do you pasture hogs as well?
We haven't for a year or two now, but we're wanting to try and get back to having the sows be able to be back out on pasture. They really enjoy, having the soft ground underneath their feet and just getting to rut around for different plants. They seem to enjoy eating grass and alfalfa and whatnot that they can find out there.
Makes
Yeah.
them a lot mellower and easier to
Yeah.
work with.
We had a couple wet years, so it was hard to have them out in the pastures. If it's a hot day, it's going to be a hot day. You'll see them out in the morning, and then during the day they go back to the barn, and then in the evening, here they come again out here.
Sometimes they'll stay out overnight. And they're good for breaking up and helping the decomposition of the manure.